Here's my take. Last week, a minor geopolitical earthquake shook the Middle East. Saudi Arabia and Turkey, two nations that have been openly hostile toward each other for much of the last decade, pledged to go to war in each other's defense. Along with Pakistan, they signed the Mecca Joint Defense Agreement, declaring NATO style that an attack on one would be treated as an attack on all. Now, Pakistan and Saudi Arabia have long had close security ties, but Saudi Arabia and Turkey have been bitter regional rivals, clashing over Qatar, Egypt, the Muslim Brotherhood, and most explosively, the murder of Jamal Khashoggi in Istanbul, which Turkish leader Erdogan appeared to blame directly on the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. So what brought them together? Donald Trump, or rather the two countries' diminishing faith in him and his word. The Iran war has been a masterclass in how to squander credibility. Recall that Saudi Arabia and Qatar both received security guarantees from Donald Trump only last year. But Trump's word is as solid with his counterparts abroad as it was with his bankers in New York. He has repeatedly declared that a deal with Tehran was just days away. By mid-June, one tally counted at least 38 pronouncements that a deal was near or Iran desperately wanted one. Yet this week, an Iranian source told Reuters that negotiations had made absolutely no progress. The world has learned to treat his Truth Social announcements as a kind of mix of fact and fiction, like some of the AI-generated videos he posts. The same pattern is visible in Europe. In May, Trump announced that 5,000 American troops would leave Germany and suggested more cuts were coming. The Pentagon then scrapped a planned deployment of roughly 4,000 troops to Poland. Days later, Trump announced that an additional 5,000 troops would go to Poland. Sometimes he threatens not to defend Europe against Russia. Other times, he says he will. Imagine being a European defense minister trying to construct a 10-year military plan around this. Trump declared this week that the United States had total control of the Strait of Hormuz. Yet ship tracking data recorded just 14 vessels transiting in one day recently, compared with more than 130 a day before the war. This is not simply a matter of presidential style or rhetoric. It goes to the heart of American power. For 8 decades, the United States built up something as powerful as aircraft carriers and squadrons of F-35s: credibility. Allies believed American commitments would endure from one administration to the next. Adversaries understood that American threats, while sometimes exaggerated, carried real weight. The system was not perfect. Washington did break promises and make mistakes, but there was a broad presumption that the United States was a predictable actor, and the president's words meant something. Trump treats promises and threats as if he's playing a grand game of bluff. But unpredictability is a very different thing in an alliance than in a real estate negotiation. If allies cannot know whether troops will arrive or leave, whether tariffs will rise or fall, whether an agreement signed today will survive until tomorrow, they do not become more obedient, they become more independent. Countries are building insurance policies. Denmark chose a Franco-Italian air defense system rather than the American Patriot. Canada is reconsidering its F-35 purchases. European governments are investing heavily in their own arms industries. South Korea has become the second largest seller of arms to NATO countries in Europe and is helping supply the Gulf's air defense with systems cheaper than Patriots. The Dutch central bank has moved critical cloud services to a European provider to reduce dependence on American technology. And now Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Pakistan are constructing a security architecture of their own. None of these moves by themselves amount to a rupture with Washington, but they show a deepening loss of faith in America's word. The same is happening with American threats. If Washington threatens tariffs, extracts concessions, and then threatens tariffs again, governments conclude that accommodation does not produce safety. To paraphrase Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney from earlier this year, if countries hope that compliance will buy safety, it won't. So the rational response is to build alternatives. This is how great powers decline. not necessarily through some dramatic defeat, but as other nations quietly stop organizing their world around them. America remains immensely powerful. It has the world's strongest military, frontier technologies, vast capital markets, formidable alliances, and the dollar. But credibility is an asset too, painstakingly accumulated over generations and astonishingly easy to spend and squander. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, President John F. Kennedy sent former Secretary of State Dean Acheson to Paris to brief Charles de Gaulle on the discovery of Soviet nuclear missiles in Cuba. Acheson brought reconnaissance photographs to prove the case. President de Gaulle, hardly an American supplicant, waved them away. He said he did not need the evidence. The word of the President of the United States was enough. That scene is unimaginable today. This concern about Iran wanting to assassinate the American president and high-level American leaders, correct me if I'm wrong, but it all begins in Trump's first term when the United States assassinates Iran's essentially the head of the Iranian military, Qasem Soleimani, right?
That's right. After the Soleimani assassination, there were various Iranian plots. Fortunately, none came to fruition to try to assassinate the president. So the fact of the matter is, there's nothing new in the Iranians wanting to take the president's life. And that probably added to the Secret Service's decision to be extra cautious. And I don't know anybody who's faulting them for that. It's actually the decoy plane and putting other lives at risk that people are beginning to question.
And in the context of the current war, obviously, I'm assuming from the Iranian point of view, the United States and Israel have collectively, in a sense, assassinated most of Iran's top leadership, including the supreme leader, including dozens of senior Iranians, and this is payback. But what I wonder about is assassinations are very hard to do. Are there other things the Iranians could be trying to do that we should be worried about?
Well, certainly we've seen a big one, Fareed, in the considerable evidence that the Iranians have used cyber techniques to get into the municipal water systems run across the United States. We know of about a dozen states right now that seem to have had some level of intrusion and manipulation by Iranian cyber teams. The US government has tentatively, but not definitively, associated this with the cyber operators of the IRGC. And that, in many ways, is more worrisome because, there's a lot of protection around the president. And obviously, it would be a huge, huge issue if there was an assassination attempt or, God forbid, worse, against the US president. But it's a much harder thing to defend the 51,000 municipal water supplies around the United States, many of which barely have security budgets at all.
And, what I worry about is for the Iranians, this is an existential war, right? Like they view this as either they're going to survive this or this regime will collapse. And so you could imagine them being willing to go to extreme measures. Is there your sense that anybody in the administration is thinking about that? The Iranians have done things they've never done before, right? Like close the Strait of Hormuz. They'd never dared do that. And if pressed more, they might do the kind of things you're describing, even though they've never dared to do it so far.
There is the fear that we have a lack of imagination about how the Iranians can reach us. Obviously, their missile capability cannot reach the United States or anywhere close. The cyber attacks, that's a different story, Fareed, because as early as 2013, there was evidence and ultimately an indictment of a attempted cyber attack on a dam in Westchester County, New York. I knew it well because as a kid growing up in that area, we used to play on this dam. I could have told the Iranians there's not much water behind it. But it was pretty shocking that they got into it. And the fact of the matter is that should have been a big warning sign to us. During the Biden administration, there was a big effort to try to provide funding for some of these municipalities to do at least basic cyber forensics and cyber protection. I'm not sure how far that got, but the Trump administration has pretty well disassembled the cybersecurity and infrastructure security agency, part of DHS, that is supposed to handle these kinds of things. And so you're worried about it because, frankly, it's not a fair fight to put a municipality up against a state actor like Iran.